On Thursday, the 15th of January 2009, US Flight 1549 took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York, bound for North Carolina, captained by Chesley Sullenberger, aka Sully. 2 minutes after takeoff, the plane ploughed through a flock of geese, instantly damaging both engines, which then immediately lost power. Losing one engine is unfortunate but not too serious. Losing both is catastrophic. At this point, the aircraft was over the Bronx, one of the most densely populated parts of the city. Sully had split seconds to make some critical decisions to try and save both the 150 people on board and countless people on the ground. Realising they wouldn't make it to any of the local airports, he took the decision to crash land the plane on the Hudson River. He was relying on his instincts as an experienced pilot, and he had a number of vital things to do to attempt to bring the plane down safely, from getting the nose the right angle, getting the speed down, executing a turn while gliding, all in a matter of seconds. And he did it. Every single person walked off that plane, and the story was dubbed The Miracle on the Hudson. You're probably wondering at this point if we've accidentally scheduled the wrong talk. Well, I'll get to the point. Sully had trained as a pilot. He had put in hard work over years of practice and learning so that those decisions he took when the pressure was on were instinctive. He reacted automatically to the situation he was in. The choices he made were second nature to him. And that's our hope for ourselves, that this Christ-like character described in Galatians would not just be our second nature, but our first nature. Who we are becoming, as Rich put it, the things that define us, as Tim explained. And today, as we look at the final triplet of faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, I'd like to suggest that we, like Captain Sully and his pilot training, have to have some self-discipline if these fruits are going to develop in us. Because when we invite Jesus into our lives and we receive the Holy Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit is the evidence of God's work in our lives. That's the Spirit shaping and forming our character to be more like Jesus. But this fruit doesn't just grow automatically. We can't just sit back and wait for it to appear. The fruit, that's your love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. The fruit is both the gift of God and the result of the person of faith making conscious decisions to cultivate this way of life, to walk in step with the Spirit. The habits of the heart and mind, the shaping of our will towards God's will. This is both the work of the Spirit and a conscious choice, which we have to work hard to remember to make. Now, if I was Tim or Rich, I'd have a quote from some great ancient mind, or if I was Steve, I'd have a beautiful line of poetry to make my point. But I think this quote from a modern day philosopher and personal inspiration says it all. Dolly, over to you. Thank you, Dolly. Well, to do it on purpose requires some discipline, and more so now than ever. As we head into a possible 6 months of restrictions and further uncertainty, this is a time for pressure for us all. And times of pressure reveal character. And we have choices to make about how we'll respond, how we will treat each other at this time, whether we'll press into God or lean away. This is a time when deliberate cultivation of the fruit of the Spirit is really pressing. As we'll eventually come to in a bit, we're not doing this on our own, but we are required to make some effort. So let's look at the final 3 in the list: faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Where love, joy, and peace are about a Godward focus, and patience, kindness, and goodness are more about a manward focus towards others, faithful gentleness and self-control are more selfward. They are about us, our character, our inner being. So, faithfulness. Let's unpack the word and give it a bit more depth. So by faithfulness, we're talking about trustworthiness, sincerity, loyalty, being utterly reliable. God's nature is to be faithful. And we can decide to be like that, to be like him. And sometimes it can be in just the little choices we make. Can you be trusted with a secret if somebody shares something with you? Are you true to your word? Do you turn up to things when you say you will? For the first 4 months of lockdown, I had a doorstep chat with our very elderly, very lonely neighbour every couple of days. Now, before you think me too under, let me tell you, he can talk the back legs off a donkey, but I made an effort to be faithful. I wanted to be reliable for him. But since lockdown has eased, passivity has crept in. I'm afraid I haven't knocked on his door in weeks. My discipline has slipped, and it has happened imperceptibly. Has passivity crept up on you too? Where are you compromising when you know you shouldn't? God needs people who are faithful. This community needs people who are faithful. Right, gentleness. Full disclosure, I used to really dislike this one. Growing up, my Bible had meekness rather than gentleness in its translation. And do you know, that really riled me because, well, frankly, I didn't really understand what it meant. It just sounded kind of weak to me. However, gentleness as a fruit of the Spirit is more about having a quiet strength under great control, a strong hand with a soft touch. It's not about passivity or timidity. It's about being gentle of heart. And doesn't that just scream Jesus to you? And our call is to carry that gentleness, that accessibility, that strength and sensitivity to others. Now, in this COVID time, we might want to mouth off, criticize other people's decisions, have a rant about this or that, complain about the situation, whinge about online church. We can instead choose to pause and understand, to have that quiet strength under great control. Jesus is all about arms open wide, not finger pointing. Lord, let that be our instinct. Self-control. Well, in lockdown, we no doubt all have numerous examples of where we have lacked self-control, from the nightly medicinal glass of wine to during the challenges of homeschooling, Lord protect us, the growing addiction to crisps. But self-control, when we look at Jesus as our example, isn't just about controlling the negative. It's not only about restraint or repression. Self-control is also about positive actions, choosing to do things that feel like they compete with our will, perhaps. It's about being determined and not distracted. I've got a close to the bone analogy for you here. Church at the moment. I think we can all agree that we are a bit over it. Online church is not as good as meeting together in person. It's hard to engage. The sessions with the kids on the field, while brilliant, they're so brief, and it's horrible not to be able to stay and chat afterwards. We know, we feels ya. But I want to really encourage you to activate some self-control, where you might be wanting to disengage, to take your foot off the gas, to let church slip for a while. I challenge us all to be disciplined, to press in, not just for your own sake, but because we need each other to turn up. Church is God's gathered people. And so this is the best we can do for now. So join in, dig deep. Let's not grumble about what church isn't, but let's celebrate what it is. Let's be purposeful. Let's celebrate our togetherness, and let's encourage each other. Because our church family is less when you aren't there. We have a choice. We can decide to make the best of it and show some grit, as Steve would say, or not. And if you're watching this, I guess you've probably already made your choice. Well done. Anyway, sorry if this got a bit heavy. There's good news, so let's finish on a high. We desire our instincts to be like those of Captain Scully, instinctively making good choices. And we're not doing this alone. Whenever we make an intentional move towards God and His will, there is help available. God is sensitive to the slightest move of the heart towards him. He walks with us as we choose to walk by the Spirit. And this walking is the action of saying yes to God. Are you willing to be willing? Because maybe that's a good place to start.